Greetings from a rainy South Jersey. This is Pink Girly, and today I'm going to try to catch up on some of my unfinished projects and finish up a couple of videos. So this video is the part 2 of my whimsical mixed media. So if you haven't seen part 1, I would ask that you check that out, and then this video would make more sense. And as you can see, if you watch the first video, I've done a fair amount of doodling on my project. And I got my order out of sync. I'm just really kind of starting to dabble in this. Oh, look, I got black ink all over my finger already. In this mixed media genre. And I got ahead of myself. I got all excited about my doodling, and I forgot that I wanted to do some collage and I wanted to do some stamping on this project. So what I did, instead of you having to sit and watch me doodle for 45 minutes, I did most of my doodling. And like I said, I should have done that after I did my collage work and my stamping. Now, normally if I was going to add a collage piece, I would just tear it and add it on. But this, I just thought I would try it. I stamped out a heart shape. I just took a piece of a book page and stamped it. That's not focusing. I don't know how these girls get their focus. I find that autofocus can be annoying, but let's just go with it and see how that goes. So I just cut out a heart shape. Or maybe now I turned it off. I'm not sure. And I just put a couple little collage pieces on here. I like to work in odd numbers when I do stuff like this. So I just put 3 on. And now I'm going to do some stamping. And like I said, I should have done that in the back before I did the doodling. So I'm going to use this Stays On product. This is called Gothic Purple. I just picked this up yesterday. You could stamp in black. I want it to be a little more muted and not really pop out at you. I want you to see the birds and that work, rather than, this is more of a background item, and that's why I should have done it first before I did my doodling. And I have this stamp. I think this was a stamp stencil combo. It's I believe it's a Tim Holtz product, and if you'd really like to know what this is called, just leave me a message and I'll figure it out and send you the info. But I thought I might like to use this little swirly, circly thing on this. So I'm going to pull this off and attach it to my stamping block. And like I said, I want it to be in the background. I don't want it to be real dark. So I'm just going to ink up, and I don't necessarily need to have the whole, maybe I'll put it on this way, the whole image, just portions of the image. And I think I'm going to go for this top part. I don't know if you can see that a little better, of the stamp. And it's just a clear stamp, and I'm just going to put some ink on here. And then I'm going to stamp it off on another piece of paper, scrap paper. And I also like to stamp my images on this is an old mouse pad. Look at that bad boy. He's been used a few times, right? So I'm going to put that under my paper. And of course, this is not a good idea either, to stamp on top of your work. Now see, it's a new ink pad, and I haven't used the stamp in a while, so I didn't get any ink. So this is why you want to test your ink pad and your stamp on a scrap piece of paper so that you don't mess up your, oh, that's really dark. So you don't mess up your project. And I like to use the stays on when I'm doing the mixed media stuff, because if you put any, if you use a different kind of stamp, I don't know if that's working the way I want. A different kind of ink, I guess I should say. And then you want to put any watercolor on top of it, or say you want to put some a sealer coat on your project, any of that. If the ink that you use is not permanent, it's going to smear. Where the stays on doesn't. Once it dries, it's there, and you can put water on top of it. You could re-ink it. You can put any kind of medium over top, like a sealer, or if you wanted a glossy finish in a certain area, glue, anything wet that you would put on top of it, it's going to stay where it is. I'm not liking the way this looks in particular. I think I'm going to flip it around and use the other end of the stamp and see how that looks. It's just not what I had. I wish I had some swirly things. But I don't think I have a swirly kind of stamp that I have in my mind. That might be a little better. Alright, so I'm going to re-ink this. And I'm going to take most of it off. I'm not going to do a real hard press. I'm going to take a lot of it off. And we'll see where this gets us. We'll try it first down the corner of the piece. And I'm just going to do a portion. And that didn't show up at all. Let's try it again. I'm not going to do a super hard press. That's a little darker than what I had anticipated I might like, but we're going to also put some gesso on top of this. Now the thing you want to remember is when you say I want to put a little bit of a stamp up here, but I don't want the bottom of the stamp to get on my birds. So I'm going to take a piece of paper and put that down so I don't get anything on my bird. So I just got a little bit there. A lot of times I like to use a script type of stamp. But I thought I'd do something a little different with this one. I'm not going to put a lot on. I have my workspace cluttered with a bunch of things. I'm kind of just fidgeting around here. I'll put another one up here in the corner. So that just gives us an idea. And like I said, you could use anything depending on your project. You could use flowers, you could use musical notes, you could use anything you might have that you think would look. And it's very subtle and it's part of the background. So that's why I like to use an ink color other than black. So that's a stamping portion. And when I went ahead and cut out my hearts out of my book pages, I went and I glued those down with golden matte medium. And when I use this kind of collaging, I like to use the matte medium because it dries real well for you. I really do like to use Mod Podge when I'm scrapbooking and sticking things down in a book because the surface is not exposed. But I find sometimes the Mod Podge doesn't dry the way I like it to. So the matte medium is good for that. And I keep it in an empty soap dispenser. That way I can just squeeze out a little bit at a time. And I'm not opening up my jar. I keep my large supply capped with some plastic wrap around the top, and then I put this screw cap back on to try to keep that from skinning over and getting lumpy. And this way I have just, you know, a little bit that I can keep refilling, but it's quite handy in that dish soap container. That was not my idea. I got that idea from Dee Dee Willingham. All right, so now what I want to do is I kind of want to mute the collage bits a little bit, and I want to go over that with some gesso. Now, other gals that I've watched on YouTube that do this kind of arting, they use gesso. Sometimes they use white paint, acrylic paint. I find the gesso is a little more see-through, so I'm going to use that today. And they use a brayer, which is, if you don't know what that is, it is this. It's just a little roller on a handle, and they put down their paint and load that onto their, like, off to the side of their work, and they load the paint on their brayer, and then they go over their work like this. They get different striations and different patterns, and it looks really cool. But because I already have my birds inked and I don't really want to run over those, and my brayer, it is smaller, but it's not real small. If I had one that was maybe a third of this size, I probably would use the brayer, but this is the smallest I have. And so I don't want to really have to re-ink and go over my birds. So what I'm going to do is just use the gesso, and I'm going to use it with a brush. I might even use my finger. It just depends on how it looks once I get going. And I think I'm going to use, I have what's called a comb brush, if I can put my hands on it real quickly. I was thinking I might use a fan brush, but now that I think about it, I think I'd like to use one of my comb brushes. And of course, I've got brushes in all kinds of containers. Like I've said before, I have a hard time throwing things away. But this is a comb brush. And this is a pretty good size one. I probably should use a smaller one. Oh, this might do me. And I don't know if you can really see. Can you see those? Let's see. Something. Can you see those bristles? It's like some of the bristles are trimmed out of the hairs. Some of the hairs are trimmed out, and there's spaces in between. And this comes in real handy, like if you want to do any kind of light striping. I use it to do Santa beards, or you could use it to do fur on animals. You could use it to do grass. But I'm going to use it this morning to mute down and phase out my collage bits. And you might say, well, if you're going to fade them out, why put them in there? But it just really gives it a really cool look, and it just adds another layer and dimension of your artwork. And if you don't like it, you just don't do it. You can just do your painting and leave it at that. But I think it looks really fun. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to put out a little bit of my gesso. This is white gesso, and this brand is the Dollar Rowney brand. I would think I probably got this on sale. And I'm just putting a little bit out on my work mat. It really is and feels and looks like acrylic paint. But it's not as opaque as your acrylic paint might be. And so I'm just soaking my comb brush in my water. I don't want it to be too terribly wet. Of course, I put my paint where you can't see it. So I'm just loading up this brush a little bit and I'm just going to dab it on and just rub that in. And then drag that gesso across. And I might have to re-ink that balloon anyway, regardless. But I think that kind of looks cool. So I'm going to add some more at the bottom here. I'm just picking this up so you can see it better. I'm just going to dab some more on. And because I'm using this comb brush, I'm getting some streaking that I wouldn't necessarily get using a regular brush. But that's the kind of look that the brayer will give you. It gives you just like a streaky, run over kind of a look. Let's see what happens if I... Now, Dee Dee Willingham, I had mentioned her before in a couple of my videos. I follow her on Ustream. She uses a wet baby wipe, and it helps make clouds and streaking in a project. So I'm just going to go and get the look that I like here, and then I'm going to add a little bit to this third heart here. And my idea of it not getting on the other part of my piece and over my inking was just a crazy thought. I'm going to get that off of my tail feather. And then you can just add it wherever you want. Like I said, if you don't like it, don't put it in. I think it looks neat. And then you can add splotches of it where you might want. I'm not going to go too overboard with that. Okay. Now in the first video, you might remember that I had difficulty with this bird on the end. I couldn't get the color quite right. I couldn't get them to the way I liked them to look. And then I discovered I had some dioxide, I think that's what it's called, purple. It's a real deep purple in my watercolor box. And so I just base coated him and made him a solid purple. I kept his belly a light green, and then I just did some shading on the one side. And I tried to give him eyes, and I did some white on his eyes. I didn't really like how they looked. And so then I decided to give him sunglasses. So I put some shades on him. And then I started doodling. And then I had the bird sitting on a wire, and I thought, well, the wire's not attached to anything. I don't have a lot of room. I didn't really want to do a tree. So I just put a long straight line and added hearts on the top to make it look like the wire is attached to something. And then I just did little squiggle lines down to make it look like the wire is hooked in there. And then I did my wire in pencil, and then after I did my birds, I wanted to go back over the wire and put, ink it. And this is all just my mistakes so that you don't make the same mistakes. What I did was I forgot that I didn't want to run across certain birds. Like this guy was okay because I gave him little feet, so it looks like he's hanging onto the wire. But this guy, it went right across his tail. So then I designed a doodle in his tail that made it look like that was a planned thing and that, didn't interfere. And this guy thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I just wrote the word tweet there, but you can still see the wire. I'm going to dangle some musical notes, I think, down off of that. I left this guy not doodled so I can doodle him on camera for you. And then I just wanted to add some words. So up here, and this is supposed to be replica of a sun, I put happy days. And then because this bird looks so different, I just put down the side of him, sing your own song. And then on this little blue bird, I put the words birds of a feather. Just wrote that in. And then I just put hashtag friends. And I think that's all the words I'm going to put. So all I have left to do now is to doodle the guy in the center. And then I'm going to go over these areas that I just gessoed over. And I think the project will be pretty much be finished. Now, I doodled a couple of things in white. I did stars in the background. I wanted those to be subtle so you can't really see. And then I just did some little dots. And you could spatter that, but I didn't want to have to cover up the birds. And then I just wanted to put something in here, and I put a white stem with a heart on the top. And I thought it looked too faded out and you couldn't really see it. So then I went over it with the black, and it really got too thick. I don't really care for that. So now what I'm debating is, do I just leave it like that and call it a day? Or do I switch that out and put something else in there? I can't erase it. It's permanent ink. I use the Posca pens, which is an acrylic paint. So I'm thinking I might turn that into a tall, narrow birdhouse. But I'm still thinking on that. So I may still do that because I really don't like the way that that heart looks there. And most folks will look at that and just find it okay. I apologize, my dogs for some reason are going crazy out front. So I'm going to clean up my gesso that I have here on my work mat, because I know, even though I know that it's there, I'm going to end up smushing my page into it. So we'll get rid of that. Now, I'm not an expert doodler. I can doodle. It doesn't necessarily come real easy for me. I have to think about doodles. I know things that I like, but when I go to do a doodle, I don't necessarily have it in my head. So what I've decided to do is I'm making some doodles in a little book. So I have this book laying around, ripped out some pages, used it for some other things. But when I think of a doodle or see something that I like, either in a color book or someone else's project, I'm just going to replicate it and put it in here. And then when I'm working on a project and I'm thinking, oh, I've used the heart 6 times, I've used the star, what can I use? I'm going to be able to come to my reference book and look at the different doodles that I've collected. And then I'll have some ideas. So you might think about this. This is cool if you get like a little travel journal or something. Like I just picked this up on the clearance rack. I think it was AC Moore. I'm going to keep this for just sketching. But you can throw this in your handbag, backpack. You know, they're easy to carry, easy to stash. But then you've got something you can write in. Sitting and waiting for a doctor's appointment, you can either sketch, or if you're trying to gather some doodle ideas, sitting in front of the TV. If you take a train or a bus, you know, and something comes to you, you've got some place to put it. Any kind of a little book like this is great to have. Always have a pencil, and then you can just record some of your ideas, whether they're words or craft project ideas, whatever. You have a little something to jot them all down in. So these are some of the doodles that I've been thinking about and that I can use on different projects. So that's just a little tip for you that I have found to be helpful. So now what we have to do is just finish up doodling this center guy. I really haven't thought too much about him, and I'm going to use probably mostly my Posca paint marker. And these may come in it may come in more than 2 sizes. I know of 2 sizes. This one is called a 3.24. And that's, I think they consider that a fine tip. And you know, it's not too bad, but it's not super fine. And then they have this other size. They may have a brush marker too, I'm not certain. This one is a 0.7 millimeter Posca pen, but you'll see this is like a super fine tip. Hope you can see it. So this is great. Of course, they have these in different colors. They mostly have black and white, but I did get a set of all different colors, which come in handy at times. They also have, of course, gold and silver. So like on this, oh, it's not this project, another one I'm working on. This one here, I put the pink Posca on these branches and then outlined them in the black. So I thought that looked kind of cute. So sometimes the colors, Posca pens come in handy. And so I don't know that you really need to watch me do this, but you have to shake it up like a paint pen. And when you first get it, the tip is white, and you just pounce it up and down on a scrap piece of paper until the ink, the paint starts to, you know, flow down to the tip and then loads the tip. Sometimes when you're working on top of a surface, like here we have watercolor, and you're going over top, it'll start to pick up some of that watercolor. And so the tip will get dirty and you might not get a good flow of ink. So you just want to keep that in mind, that you have to wipe the tip off occasionally and reshake it. And so I'm just going to go over just a little bit where I put that white gesso. And I'm going to redo my balloon. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. It's a little better. They do take a little while to dry. It's not like your acrylic paint out of the paint bottle. I have smudged many a thing. I was working on, I think, a color book page, and I'd just done the eyelashes and then went to do something else and laid my hand in it, and now she looks like okay, she looks like a hooker. Sorry, but it's terrible because I don't pay attention to where the ink hasn't dried, and then I put my mitt right down in the wet paint. So be careful of that. Don't do that mistake that I have done. In hindsight, I'm not too crazy about the heart shapes because you got that hard edge. It doesn't really blend into the piece. So I think the torn collage bits probably would work a little better. Another thing I would caution you about the Posca pens or markers, for me anyway, sometimes when you press down and you go real fast, you get a spray because you're not, or if you've got something else down on your surface and the tip of the marker is kind of catching it, you get a little vibration in some of the paint sprays. So just be aware of that, because that's not always a good thing. All right, so for the tweet, I'm going to just drop down a couple of little lines, and then I'm going to make, I hope, a little musical note like that. And then my heart on my little drop down from my friends, I'll re-ink that. And my little buildings. If you do a project like this, you might want to do treetops or, you know, whatever. You could do a plane going by, or just leave it blank. And you have your colors of your watercoloring. You could put a lot of wording down in here. Okay, I'm going to do the top of my star, because I want these doodles to be pronounced. I mean, a little bit of striping across them isn't bad, but this you can't see. I went over. You can't see where I did my little branches. So I want those to be a little more pronounced. Now I need to do this center bird, and I need to decide what I'm going to do here. And I think I might bite the bullet and make that a birdhouse, because I'm really unhappy with that. But some of this other ink, the inking that I've done, may not be totally dry. So I'm going to just quickly hit it with my heat gun. So hold on, heat gun coming here. Dry up these spots so I don't drag my fist through it and make more of a mess. So my idea is to make a tall, narrow birdhouse here with the Posca pen. Probably what I should do is use a ruler. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, it could be angled, it can be, really, it can be whatever you want. And you can always straighten that out. Now I could go back in with acrylic paint, black paint, and cover this up. Because the paint pens, I mean, they're not too terribly expensive, but generally speaking, you wouldn't want to waste all the ink in your paint pen on this. But for the sake of the video and not having to get out another and you got to shake it every once in a while so that ink comes down. And like I said, you need to clean your tip off occasionally. Sometimes I just tap it into some water, because if that tip dries out, I find that the water helps a little bit to get the paint flowing again. You don't want to soak it in water. I just, you know, dab it down in the water. Kind of helps clean off the tip, I find. And it does, of course, make your paper very wet, so you don't want to scrub back and forth over the same spot too much, because that will pill your paper. Even though it's watercolor paper that you may be working on, it's only going to take so much. And you'll be able to tell once the paint stops flowing out of it, you'll be able to tell that you have gotten a film on top. And then you just clean your tip off. Now I'm going to let this first coat dry, and I think what I'm going to do is just do a little pointed roof like that. I'm going to color that in as well. So I'm going to let that sit and dry, and then I'm going to start doodling this bird. Not quite sure what I want to do with him, but we'll do his beak. His eye. Give him a little eyebrow. And then I was thinking I'd like to put little dots down in these feathers. You can't really see that there. You can see those. And then I'm just going to outline him. And your outlining doesn't have to be perfect. It can be kind of like a sketch. I want to make sure I get his tail. I'm trying to think of something I might want to put on his belly. I don't think he's going to need too much. I have a heart on this guy. Maybe I'll just put a couple of stars down here. Maybe I'll put one here. And then I'll put a smaller one here and a smaller one here. I think I need a little more. Sometimes with the pasta pens you can scratch it back off once you've already put a coat on there. I'm going to hit it with my heat gun. I think I'm going to take the time and get the black paint because I'm just not liking how that covered, and I don't want to scratch more of it off with the pasta. So I'm just going to put a little bit of black acrylic paint, and I really do like to use the Americana Deco Art brand. That being said, for certain things, if I'm doing one stroke painting and doing flowers with one stroke, you want the thicker acrylic paint, and for that I like to use the folk art. But for this, I don't want it to be too terribly thick, and so I'm using my Deco Art. I do not care for the store brand paints, like the Walmart brand. I think that stuff might be okay if you're base coating something, but I don't care for the coverage you get when you're doing a project like this. I don't even really like to use it when I'm using when I'm doing a background in one of my coloring books, and I'm going to black out the background to put some stars in or whatever. I like to stick to the name brand. I mean, you can get them on sale. You could use the coupon. That's just my preference. Everybody's got, depending on what you're working on, the off-brand names might work okay for you. That looks much better. Of course, it's an odd place to have a birdhouse, but hey, this is a whimsical project. So I'm much more happy with that than I was with that wonky heart that I had there. I see where I missed when I wrote my happy days, and then I did my gesso. So I want to go back over my script writing here just a little bit. Now I want this acrylic to dry really well, and then I'm going to try to go over top of that with white Posca pen and make little holes, like little bird holes there where the birds can get in. And I'm kind of thinking this is pretty much done, except for that. I'm trying to see if there's any other area that I would like to. I think I'm going to put some highlights in. Like on the balloon. I'm going to do a little highlight here on my balloon. And maybe on my heart here, I'll give a little highlight. This one over here. Come down here. So this is where you would just do your last minute things. This eye, I guess we could use a little highlight for him. Just gonna try to this, I think you would call this maybe an apartment complex rather than a birdhouse. I could spatter that too, but I don't know if I'm just asking for trouble. You can kind of make to spatter it. I would want to cover up the birds and make sure I don't. I'm just really fiddling around with this. Birdhouse. I'm not sure if I like that any better, really. But you can come back over that with color pencil and kind of knock back that white a little bit, maybe with some gray. And then I might do a shadow inside of those little bird holes with, say, a different color Posca pen, like maybe a blue. I think I have a blue. I don't know if that'll work or if it makes it worse. Let's give it a go. I'm going to have to dry this. Hold, please. sure if this is going to work the way I think it will. Just going to come back in. Put a little blue. Of course, you could do this with colored pencil too. You could use a gray. Make it look more like a shadow. Well, it doesn't look too bad. If you can really see it that much. But I think that's about it. I think we're going to call this project finished. I really enjoyed doing this kind of project. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you try something. And if you do, I would love to see your work. Before you head out, if you would give me a thumbs up on the like button, that would be greatly appreciated. And I appreciate your watching. And I'll catch you next time on one of my other videos. Have a great day and keep arting. Bye-bye.